Okay guys, we're going to be looking at measures of central tendency, and the two most common measures are mean and median. So we're going to be looking at those. We'll also be talking about if data is a good fit, which one would be a better fit, and we'll also be looking at what an outlier is. So if you look at exercise 1 talks about 12 people, the number of passwords they use, and they're looking for us to state the median number and the mean number to the nearest tenth. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to press the stat button and go to edit. I already have my numbers in L1, so from there I'm going to press the stat button and go to calc, and I'm going to go to the one variable stat section, and I want to go down to where it says calculate, and I'm going to write down what the mean and median are. So the mean in this case is sometimes called the X bar. Sorry, I had to switch to my Snart notebook. So the mean in this case is the one that says X with a bar over, that's our average. And that one to the nearest tenth will be 2.4. And then to find the median, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down, and you'll see it right on the middle of my calculator screen. That median says 2.5. So that's where you would find the mean and the median in this example. And that's the answers they were looking for, to the nearest tenth. So now we're going to move on to the next example. And again, if you need to, feel free to pause and go back if you missed something. So I'm going to go down to exercise 2. This one talks about speeds along a roadway. And again, for part A, they want us to find the mean and median for the data set. Now this one's a little different because now we have 2 columns, but we are going to label this and throw these in the stat section, put those columns in L1 and L2. So I'm going to pull up the calculator, and I'm going to go back to stat and edit, and I'm going to go up to L1 and clear and press enter to get rid of those numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and start typing in my numbers. And again, you can type in your numbers as I'm doing this as well. Just make sure that you double check everything after you get done. And the other big thing is making sure that you have the same amount of numbers in each column. So I went ahead and put the speed ones in L1. I'm going to go over to L2. I'll move my calculator over so I can see those numbers. I got 1. So now that you can see that I have the same amount in each category, so I'm going to move that calculator back over the table. And again, just double check everything. You want to make sure your numbers are in, and you press enter between each. So now what I'm going to do, because now I have a second column, and the second column says how many cars. So like in this case, there's not 134, but this means that there are actually 4 34s in the data, and they just kind of grouped them all together. So I'm going to press the stat button, go to calc. I'm going to go back to one variable stat, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the frequency list. And I'm going to put that to L2 by pressing the blue button, and then the 2 button. Now I'm going to go down to calculate again. And now, like it says, you can notice that it says n is 20. We didn't put in 20 numbers, but n equals 20 means that there are 20 different amounts for data. And in the question, it says that there's 20 vehicles. So we have the amount that we have, or are told in the question. So I'm going to go back down to median in a second, but I have the mean, which is 36.1. And then median is 35. So I'll move this down to the bottom of the screen. And then for part B, it says the speed limit along this part of the highway is 35. Based on your results from part A, is it fair to make the conclusion that the average driver does speed? Now, it kind of depends on how you would interpret speeding. But in the case of what I would call safe is anything under 10 miles over the limit. So if I look at these data right now, I really only have this one person that was speeding. Everyone else was pretty much at the limit or below it. So does the average driver speed? In this case, I'm going to write no. A majority went around the speed limit. And you could also make a mention of that one person. So, we're going to look at one more example together. If you go to the back of this page, and if you go down to number 5. So now, I'm going to skip over part A. Part A, you guys could do right now. Do that on your own, and pause the video right here. But I want to talk about part B, and talk about what an outlier is. So if you look at all the data that we have for these scores on the test, you'll notice that most of the students did pretty well, passed the test. There was only one student that got a 45, and now that's considered an outlier. So 45 is an outlier. In this case, because it is so far away from the other data. Now I went ahead and typed in the data for part A. We have the mean at, which you probably saw already, and I'll round to the nearest tenth like we did for the other one, so we got 81.8. And then we had the median at 86. So the question for part C says, which value is a better measure of the average student? Now, 81.8 would fall in between the second and third data, but the median 86 does fall right in the middle. So because there are a lot of numbers around 86, the median is a better measure. And in this case, it's better because of that outlier value. Okay, and that 86 is more centered around the data. So sometimes outliers can affect the mean, like in this case it did. But you want to make sure that if you do pick a measure, make sure it's a measure that's, in the middle of most of the values that are given to you. Okay. When you get done with this video, make sure you call me over, and I'll tell you which questions on the homework to work on. Thanks.